You're listening to Sexploration with Monika because you want to learn more about your pleasure. And how can I help change your life? Thanks for joining us today. Today, Amara, Karuna, I finally get my hands on you, metaphorically speaking. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're so welcome. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, my token straight guy. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
And a nurse at Kaiser, actually.
That's right.
So let's talk first about pleasure because that's why we're here learning about sex. Because we want it to be fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us more. You said you've gotten some tips and treasure that we can find so that we can have more pleasure and avoid the things that maybe might be pitfalls.
Right. Or might get in the way of pleasure.
Yeah.
I just want to say about myself that I've got on this path pretty early in life because I was having a lot of challenges with my own health. And
Mm.
so I got interested in all forms of natural healing, like everything I could think of. Massage and acupuncture. And then I got into learning counseling and psychic healing,
Mm. Cool.
just on this path of trying to open myself and figure out why I was having this recurring health problems. And
Yeah.
I knew really young that I was really interested in sex and I loved sex,
Mm-hmm.
but I had emotional blocks around it. And I kept having physical blocks, like getting bladder infections all the time.
Mm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
was on this quest of like, how do I open this up? How do I heal this? Because I had learned enough to know that anything that was in my body in an ongoing way was also in my emotional body in
Yeah.
an ongoing way.
Yeah. I'm
And it
really
was
with you on this,
reflecting,
on all of this.
right? It was reflecting in my physical body.
Yeah.
So that's why I got into doing sexual healing work, tantra work, trying to pursue that sense of how can I open my energy up? How can
Right.
I get back to my natural state of being? Because I believe that pleasure is a natural state of being and that
Yeah.
we're all designed for it. Like
Mm.
all of our nervous system is designed for that. We want to feel good. We want to feel healthy. We want to
Mm-hmm.
feel happy.
Yeah.
And in one way or another, even though it can get kind of twisted and we're going at it sideways, that's what we're after. We're after the feelings of feeling good and healthy and happy. And so we evolved over these millions of years as animals in these bodies with this natural program to go towards pleasure and
Right.
towards happiness.
Mm-hmm.
We've got tons of nerve endings. We've got all these different senses like smelling and tasting and seeing and hearing, not only the physical, skin contact or
Mm-hmm.
sex, which is
Mm-hmm.
what most people focus on when you think of pleasure, is like it's all about skin and that kind of stimulation. But there's so many other pathways for pleasure.
Totally.
Even accomplishing a task can bring a sense of pleasure, helping
Yeah.
other people,
Totally. Mm-hmm.
so if that's true and that we're naturally designed to have pleasure, why aren't we having more of it? Like, what gets in the way of
Yeah.
having pleasure and letting ourselves have pleasure? Why is it so difficult for us to come into that natural pleasure state?
Sure.
And I think that it's a lot about our programming and growing up in this Western civilization, which
Yeah.
is historically really body
The
negative.
messaging that we learn as children. And I mean, we live in a sex negative rape culture, really.
Right. And
It's
not
not
only sex
safe.
negative,
Yeah.
body negative and
Right.
emotion
Mm-hmm.
negative. Like
And
all
if
of
your
the
body isn't
things,
perfect, right?
right.
Yeah.
Uh, being told for centuries, like the body is evil, the body's
I
dirty, our
know.
emotions are bad and
Yeah.
shameful. So
Yeah.
if you get those messages when you're a child,
Yeah.
then you start feeling like you are bad and shameful
Right.
because your natural feelings
Right.
are not
And
okay.
how do we come back to wholeness? I mean, we can't all move to Hawaii, although it's not a bad
There's a long
idea.
path before I got to Hawaii. So
Yeah.
I think that basically, when we when we get hurt when we're young, it creates a
Yeah.
blockage in the flow of
Mm.
energy because
Yeah.
pleasure and health are based on a free flow of energy that's
Yeah.
balanced.
Mhm.
Our bodies are designed to have everything circulating,
Mhm.
everything flowing. And when something happens that's painful and it doesn't get healed, it kind of blocks the flow.
Right.
And the energy that's flowing along has a kink in it. And
Right.
so it tends to
Mhm.
build up on this side of the kink and be deficient on this side of the kink.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so a lot of natural healing is like figuring out how to get that unkinked.
Right.
How do you get that to
Mhm.
flow
How
again?
do you get your
And
energy to flow?
so there's so many different ways to
Mhm.
get the energy to flow and open up. And if we allow it to happen, then we naturally, because we're kind of built with an innate healing mechanism. Our body knows how to heal itself, within limits. If you get a cut, your body will heal it up again. And
Mhm.
if you get an emotional hurt, if you're allowed to process it in that moment,
Right.
it will also heal and
Yeah.
release. And,
Yeah, it's better to let
uh,
it go right away, isn't it? Mhm.
right. But most of us haven't had the acceptance and openness to
Mhm.
allow the emotion to be in that present moment and
Mhm.
let it release.
Exactly.
Because of our culture. So, anger naturally releases with loud sounds and big body motor movements.
Yeah, right.
And, hot sweat. And fear releases by shaking, screaming,
Mhm. Mhm.
laughing,
Those are good healing tools as well.
right?
Shaking,
And sadness
shake it
releases
out.
by crying and sobbing.
Mhm.
And so, if we allow those natural processes to happen, then those emotions flow through.
Right.
Emotion
And
is
just
energy
accept
and
yourself
motion.
where you are in this moment so you can
Right.
move forward. Yeah.
Exactly. And so then it can be opened up and released, and you come back into that natural flow of energy.
Right.
So we're very flexible beings. We're
We
very,
have infinite flexibility. It's true. We can do
yes,
anything. We just
yes,
have to decide what we want to do, you know?
right. And so when there's a blockage, if it stays there a long time, it kind of gets ingrained in
Right.
the body and
Calcified.
ingrained in the brain,
Sure.
actually in the neural
Yeah. And you
pathways.
get habituated to what, like maybe your negative thoughts or
Exactly.
your pain, right?
Exactly. And it kind of digs a groove, or it actually makes a little channel in the brain of the neurons. They actually make a little highway.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that that gets repeated, the more that that channel gets strong. And you can change, but they can dismantle themselves. If you change the way you're thinking or way you're behaving,
Right.
those old pathways will take themselves apart and form new pathways.
Right.
So
And you can do
neuroplasticity is
that
really,
with pleasure, even. You can like give your body pleasure like pick a new spot, right? Like, let's say if
right.
you are losing sensation in one spot, you can find a new place to have an orgasm, like your earlobe.
Yeah, exactly. And the more that you reinforce a new pathway, the stronger it gets. So you can
Right.
reclaim, like if things have gotten numb or
Hmm.
painful, you can
Mm-hmm.
reclaim those by practicing going in those new pathways. And so people who spend a lot of time feeling pleasure have more of a capacity for having
Yeah,
pleasure.
and you really have to take the time to like notice what are my sensations right now. And so
Right.
that's why self pleasure is such a great practice, not just because, it helps release tension, but it's also kind of a meditation.
Yeah, exactly. And like people who like eat and are chefs,
Oh, yeah, right.
Develop
Yeah, food
more
pleasure.
taste. They
Pleasure
can
from
taste
food.
more
Sure.
than normal people have. And people that are musicians, they can actually hear more
Mm.
than normal people can.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
you can develop your nervous system to have a more of a
With
capacity
your
for
focus
intense
and your
pleasure
intention. Mm-hmm.
as you
Absolutely.
practice it.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
and you learn to run more power, more chi, more intensity, and be
Right.
able to hold it. Whereas if you haven't really developed that over a period of time, then it can feel kind of like, this is too much.
Oh,
I can't
sure. It
handle
can
it.
be
You know,
overwhelming.
too much electricity in the wires.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I'm curious if
So
anyone has come up with a good name for this kind of learning that happens in the brain, this neuroplasticity, this mind body connection. Do we have a name for how people learn how to have pleasure in new ways?
I don't know if there's one particular title for
Remapping.
it, but there's
Yeah,
many
there's
books
a couple
about
of
it and
different.
many
Mm-hmm.
ways of rewiring your brain. And
Yeah.
people can even rewire their brain out of not only like emotional blocks and
Mm.
neuroses, but they can rewire it out of physical uh,
Paralysis.
allergies.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
if you're reacting to things, it's the same thing. Your body gets into a habit, and you can restructure your brain and
Oh, even with things that you're allergic to, you can
yes.
decide that you're just not going to be allergic to that anymore.
Well, it's not about just deciding. You have to communicate with your subconscious,
Right.
and you can't. You know, your
Yeah, you
brain has
can't just
four
start
different
eating
levels.
something that's reactive.
Right. Your brain has four different parts that evolved at four different times.
Uh-huh.
And the part that we're mostly focused on in our culture is this little tiny part. It's like 5% of the brain. It's in the forebrain, and that's our conscious mind. The
Right.
rest of the brain is your subconscious that
Right.
runs your heart and your blood and your breathing and your feelings and emotions and your intuition and all of that stuff. And so if you can communicate, use your conscious mind to focus, to talk to the rest of your brain and learn to be friends with it and how it talks. It talks in a different way. It doesn't use words, it uses pictures and
Oh,
feelings.
right.
And
Yeah.
so when you rewire your subconscious, it takes repetition,
Hmm.
doing it over and over and over again. It takes touching your body and focusing on your feelings. And what they found is that when you're trying to rewire a pattern of any kind, physical or emotional, mental, if you add pleasure to that process, it's
Right.
way faster,
Faster. Exactly.
way
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do as many repetitions
Right.
of whatever your affirmation is, whatever the way, and it can be any kind of pleasure. It could be sexual pleasure. It could be just like massaging your face or
Yeah.
taking a deep breath and
Or, looking at something beautiful or,
right.
yeah.
So one of the practices that I lead sometimes is a ceremony where we have one person receiving pleasure from two people. They get to request what kind of pleasure they want. And then at the same time, the people are reading to them affirmations that they've designed.
Oh,
And so we use that intentional, like I'm creating a new reality here with these affirmations. These two people are
right.
saying this to me while they're massaging me and petting me. And
Oh, that sounds so sweet.
yeah, it's very sweet and it's very powerful.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's good to think about is what is pleasurable to you?
Yeah.
Like, and how often do you allow yourself to feel pleasure?
Right.
Or how much are you caught in a, like, I have to do stuff, I have to get this done, I have
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Doing. Yeah.
doing
Getting stuck in
focus.
doing an
How much do you
accomplishment.
allow yourself to feel pleasure? Because there's a lot of things that we do every day that are inherently pleasurable.
Right.
Like even just taking a breath. If you
Yeah.
focus right
Right.
now on just taking a deep breath,
Ah. Yeah.
it feels good
Right.
to fill your lungs up. It feels nice. The air coming in and out of your
Yeah.
nose feels nice. It has an inherent pleasure to it.
And sometimes we really like do things like hold our breath, or we sometimes don't breathe that much, because we're don't want to feel that much. We're trying to be busy and productive and be quiet,
Absolutely.
and all these little programs that we've maybe adopted with more or less consciousness.
Yes, because not breathing is one of the most effective ways to not feel things.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
so if you're growing up in a society where you're not supposed to feel things, you
Right.
learn that really fast,
Yeah.
holding your breath.
Like, well,
And
and
most
it, yeah, exactly. Because as kids, you're like, oh, kid, quiet down. You're being too loud.
right. Yeah. Even if you're
Yeah.
having fun, you're being
Yeah,
too loud.
exactly. Right.
Yeah. So most people just breathe into the top 1/3 of their lungs.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's where the least blood is, because
Ah.
from gravity, all the blood is mostly in your lower third of your lungs. So
Ah.
if you even take just 5 deep breaths in a row, you're oxygenating your blood way more efficiently, and it can change your brain chemistry and completely change your mood. 10 deep breaths
Ah.
that are slow in a row
10
is
deep
like one of the
breaths.
fastest way.
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of
So,
like that polyvagal breathing, right? Like
yeah.
deep breathing.
Exactly. And because when we're stressed, we naturally breathe kind of high and fast.
Right.
And so if you intentionally breathe low and slow, it'll tell your subconscious like, okay, there's no real
Ah.
danger right
Yeah,
now. We can chill
exactly.
out. We can relax.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to recommend this book that my friend wrote. It's called The Skills of Pleasure by Stuart Blackburn.
Uh-huh.
And he goes into a lot of detail about how to actually learn to give yourself more pleasure. And he says that it's a
Ooh, how to
skill.
learn, how to
Yes,
consciously, intentionally be like,
yes,
more pleasure for me, please.
right. But he says it's a skill that we've
Mm.
lost
Mm-hmm.
because
Because
we've
we're so
been
busy being
trained in
productive.
this. Yeah. And so some of the, I'll tell you a little bit about what's in the book. He talks about 3 principles of pleasure. And one is pleasure is experienced in the present moment.
Yeah,
All the time.
absolutely.
So that means we need to be having our consciousness present in
Right,
the present moment. We need to
right.
be grounded
What are you
and
doing
present.
right now?
Right, exactly. And I see this happen so many times. There's so many opportunities for pleasure that go unnoticed. For example,
Right.
eating. Eating
Yeah,
is one of the most pleasurable things that we do.
right,
All kinds of chemicals happen in your brain when you eat, pleasure chemicals. But a lot of times we're eating while we're looking at the news
right.
or we're
Or
looking at
you're
Facebook.
distracted, or you're trying to scarf it down before you have to get done with something else, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're
And you
not like
miss,
chewing your food either.
yeah,
So it's
and
not
you
like
miss,
great for you. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. You just missed the whole thing.
right.
So you could have had this lovely, yummy, savoring experience, but
Yeah.
you weren't conscious of it at
Right,
all.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and you
Right.
bite your tongue. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
another one of his principles is that we can choose how we feel in the moment. We
Yeah,
can
own your
focus.
own emotions.
Right. We can
Yeah,
focus on the pleasure
right.
or not. We
Mm-hmm.
get to choose that.
Right.
And another principle is that pleasure shows us, it's like a sign that shows us that we're aligned with our core being. So who we really are, what our real intention is, what our real path is. Pleasure is like a sign, like you're going in the right direction,
Right.
you know?
It,
And so I found the book really useful. He also says he has the 7 skills of pleasure, and the
mm-hmm.
first skill is awareness.
Right.
How aware can you be of how you feel on how many different levels? What's your emotion doing? What's your body doing? What's your mind doing? How aware can you be in the moment? If we just take a moment right now to become centered, close your eyes and just scan. your state of being. What's going on? Most of your attention has been probably in your mind listening to these thoughts and ideas. But what else is going on at the same time? You probably feel pressure
Yeah.
wherever you're sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your neck and your shoulders have some sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's sensations on your skin where your clothes is, or there's it's warm or it's cool. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. You may be having different emotions as you hear these ideas talked about.
Mm.
I personally have not been bored since I was a teenager because there's so much going on all the
Right.
time,
Yeah.
constant
Yeah. And if you
inside.
change your focus to the present moment by just focusing on your sensations. Yeah.
Right. It's one of the easiest meditations, actually. A
Right.
sensory meditation in the moment is one of the easiest meditations rather than like trying to keep your mind focused on one image or thought,
Right.
but to just keep tracking your breathing and tracking your sensations. You can easily get into a trance state doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And trance
Yeah, and
states can be so
go ahead.
healing because you get to those those different brainwave states. We're often in um, beta brainwave state. That's when,
Right.
as we're adults, we're like trying to accomplish goals. Sometimes we get stressed out. We're in high beta. But
Mm-hmm.
when we're more relaxed, like when you're meditating or watching television or just at a state of relaxation, then we're going to be in, isn't it, alpha brainwave state? And then they just
Mm-hmm.
get deeper and deeper and more transformative as you go deeper.
Right. And as the wavelengths get longer.
Right. And more healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
so
so
cool.
another skill that he talks about is giving yourself permission to have
Mm,
pleasure.
mm, mm,
It's an actual thing to practice. Like, is it okay if I have pleasure? Because people have issues like, oh, I'm being selfish. I'm being a hedonist. I
oh,
shouldn't allow myself, there's
right.
judgment. Like,
Right.
life shouldn't be this much fun.
Right.
Those kind of things. So giving
Right.
yourself permission to have pleasure, that's another step. And then also the idea of pleasure as an adventure. Like, what if you're exploring? Like, what kind of pleasure might you have that you don't know about already? Could you try new things
Mm,
and see what you like or don't like? Try different intensities. Like, think of it as like, well, uh, sometimes you ask people, well, what do you like? And they actually don't know.
right. And have,
And
give yourself permission to have an investigation.
right. And especially sexually, that can come up. People can be like, well, I don't know, just try something. But it's so much better if you actually know what gives you pleasure and where it is on your body and what you like.
Mm,
So thinking of it as an adventure to explore is another one.
yeah.
And as I said before, actively choosing pleasure, actively looking for what you enjoy, not just like, oh, it might come to me sometimes. Like maybe I'll just sit passively back and wait for something pleasant to come along. It's more like, no, where could I find it?
Right.
Could what gives me pleasure? I like looking at flowers. Maybe I should buy some flowers or go out and look for flowers
Right.
and enjoy the flowers a little bit more.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And another one is savoring. So savoring is a skill. As we were talking about eating, like you're not only being present with eating, but what if you got your entire awareness into the sensation and you elongated it, like you tried to make it last as long as possible.
Mm, mm-hmm.
I remember when I was a child, I used to eat like one sunflower seed at a time
Uh-huh.
so I could have the sensation in my mouth as long as
Right.
possible.
Right.
I was just kind of doing that intuitively,
Right.
like giving myself the pleasure hormones
Right.
by having the
Sure.
taste sensation.
Sure. And I think sometimes we get so like, oh, I'm hungry, I need to eat. And then, kind of skipping over, like, okay, what are the components of each bite? And can I taste those components? Because right
Mm-hmm.
now I'm trying to be more conscious as I'm eating and then slow down and really noticing, okay, does it have can I taste the balsamic vinegar? Oh, I
Right.
can taste the butter. Oh, I can taste the sourdough. Oh, I can taste the whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Because so much happens every day, and
Yeah.
if we're in our minds a lot and we're not
Right.
actually in
Totally.
the presence of our body, we have this sensation of time going by really fast and we missed it all.
Totally. And then your life is like, wait, what was I doing?
Right, exactly.
Right.
So learning how to linger, and a really good practice for that is to take something you really like a piece of chocolate or a fruit or something
Oh,
that's
yeah.
yummy, and
Mhm.
just put it in your mouth and let it dissolve and try to keep all your attention there.
Right.
Use it as a meditation. How
Yeah. An easy,
long can you
fun
stay?
meditation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because our point of
Chocolate
consciousness,
meditation.
That sounds like a delicious
You're
meditation to
right.
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
we do this in rituals sometimes to help people practice,
Mm.
because our point of consciousness is our point of power. And wherever we're focused with our consciousness is where the energy is and where it will go and what will manifest. So when we put our point of consciousness on anything, it makes it bigger. It
Yes.
makes it fill the
Yes.
space
Right.
more.
And it
And this
also
applies
fills
to
your consciousness.
worrying too.
Yeah.
If you're worried all the time, then you're like
Right.
manifesting with worries. So
Right. Going
you want to
deeper into
choose where you put your point of consciousness, because it's our one of our main
it's
powers
the
is
only thing
where.
that you have, really.
Right,
You know?
right, absolutely. And Stewart also talks about letting go of pleasure when it's over.
Oh,
Like,
snap.
the meal is over, you're full,
Yeah.
you really shouldn't eat anymore right now. And there's
Yeah.
a little bit of letting go, maybe grieving that needs to happen. And you can turn that moment of letting go into gratitude.
Right. Yeah. That's
Like,
nice.
oh, that was really wonderful. I had
Yeah.
that moment of pleasure. That
And
sexual
it's so
experience was
fun to
lovely.
be in this whatever situation, studio, etc. This moment, even just kind of relaxing and being like, oh, this was so good, whatever it was.
It
Hmm.
also makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense that you will learn to appreciate those positive sensations more when you learn how to differentiate between, oh, that was this and this is something else, right? The on and the off.
Oh, sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. In fact, that's one
Appreciating
of
the
the
journey.
ideas that I got out of the book that I really liked, is that pleasure has a lot to do with contrast
Mm.
and
Mhm.
change.
Yeah.
Like if you do any one thing too long, it's no longer pleasurable. If you
Isn't
if
that
you
the
eat,
irony? Yeah.
yeah, you eat the same food, eventually, okay, that was enough of that.
Right.
If
Might get a little
you
sick
go
of it.
lay in the sun and you're enjoying the sun, eventually it'll be like, okay, now I'm too hot. I'm getting sunburned.
Right.
Now I need to get cool. And now it's pleasurable to be cool.
Right.
So it's all about the balance and the contrast. And if things shifting and things changing, that's where you follow this line of pleasure. Like what would feel pleasurable now? It's probably different than what would feel pleasurable a few minutes ago,
Yeah.
because it's always about change and contrast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about the cervical orgasm, partially because I've never had one and I didn't even realize that it was possible. And I, was a sex educator. We certainly didn't talk about this in school. And so, just to me that, and I just think it's so exciting, this new way that we could I mean, I suppose being goal oriented is never a way to, you're not going to be like, I'm going to have a cervical orgasm, right? And that's probably,
Right.
you're not going to be able to do it then. You have to relax.
Well, maybe not, but definitely you want to hold it lightly. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
But there are certain things that you can do. And I should talk a little bit about the different kinds of female orgasms and the different.
Yeah, let's talk about that because there are so many kinds of female
There are
orgasm.
many, and
Yeah.
I've studied the Taoist tradition,
Mm,
and they talk about three different kinds of female orgasm and three different kinds of female ejaculate that
right.
come with
Yeah,
each of those orgasms.
the different sensations and like what I'm trying to say goop, right? The different
Yeah,
goop that can happen. And goop
the
is good.
nectar,
We're
the
all goop
stuff.
positive here.
Right. And so the first one, and they also talk about the difference between electricity and magnetism. You know, we're all electromagnetic beings.
Yes.
We
Mhm.
run on that, our
Mhm.
nerves.
Yeah.
And but there's different nerves that are focused more on electricity or more on magnetism, according to them. And so the clitoris and the penis are, according to the Taoists, more connected to your electrical energy. And electrical energy is like zappy, like, and it's faster, it's more shallow, it's more explosive. And you get a certain kind of orgasm from that if you just stimulate the clitoris and the penis.
Mm.
The females have also inside a G spot, which I like to
Mhm.
call the goddess
G-spot
spot, which is
orgasm.
a nerve
Mhm.
plexus. And it's actually the female prostate.
Mhm.
It's got the same nerves connected to it. It has similar secretions. And so if you stimulate that area, which is usually like right inside the vagina on the top,
Mhm.
and you stimulate it in a certain way with kind of a come here movement, and you do
Mhm.
that, for long enough and in the way that feels good,
Right.
then you can get a different kind of orgasm, like a G-spot orgasm, and
Mhm.
you might get kind of a lot of ejaculate
Right.
coming out.
Mhm.
The ejaculate doesn't come out of the G spot per se. A little bit does, but it goes into the urethra
Mhm.
basically. And what you're getting when you get a really big gush, and some women have like cups of it coming out, is
Mhm.
it's actually coming out of the bladder, but the pee has been changed chemically somehow. It's more like spinal fluid. It might also be mixed with some pee,
Wow.
but that's what's going on when you're getting a really big release. It's coming actually out of the bladder.
Can you say a
But
little bit more about how?
I've smelled it when it's happened to me, and it doesn't smell like pee. It smells kind of fresh and like foresty.
Can you say a
Mm.
little bit more about how that is like spinal fluid? Just in that it's a clear fluid,
Yeah,
more
it's just like
viscous.
lymph. It's just like
Yeah,
Oh,
clear, and it has
maybe
all these different
less
hormones in
viscous.
it, tons of
hmm.
hormones. And then the last kind of orgasm is the cervical orgasm, which is mostly working from the deep nerves around the cervix. There's a lot of nerves around the cervix. I think they're called the hypogastric, the pelvic nerve, the vagus nerve, all kinds of
Mm.
nerves back there.
Mhm.
And they go into your deep brain. They're like super old, right into your reptilian animal brains. So they have more of an effect on your body. And if you approach the cervix and those deep spots, there's a spot in front of the cervix and a spot in back of it that both have a lot of nerves in them. The front spot, sometimes called the epicenter spot,
Epicenter? Epicenter?
epicenter. Yeah, and
Okay.
and these are the spots that would get stimulated if you have a long object in it, like a penis or a dildo. It's going to hit usually in front or in back of the cervix.
So
And
so
so
this is
those are
more
pressure sensitive
deep.
nerves. They aren't really like textural nerves, they're just
Uh-huh.
pressure sensitive.
Got it.
And a cervical orgasm is more like, because it's got all those nerves, it's really deep and expansive. It's called a shower of stars.
Yeah.
And so the feeling can often be a feeling of lifting the sexual energy up through the spine, like a flood of energy that comes up and out the top of your head. I think that's where the shower of stars came. But it affects the heart rate more than other orgasms, and the hormones in the brain more than just if you're only stimulating the clitoris.
Yeah, interesting. So I told my friend that you could have a cervical orgasm, and she was actually just about ready to have her cervix removed because she had a cancer scare.
Uh-huh.
But she said, "Oh my God, I had a cervical orgasm, and I thought I was losing my mind."
Right. Sometimes I refer to it as like, okay, now you need to scrape me off the ceiling.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It,
And I can see how, you would think, this was kind of like losing your mind. Maybe because, maybe our minds, we think so much, we're so much in our brain that, it's nice to be out of your mind and in your body. And certainly, um, I don't know. I'm looking forward to experimenting.
yeah, well, there's certain ways you can stimulate yourself to go for that kind of an orgasm. And
Uh-huh.
riding on top,
Mm-hmm.
if you're having sex with a man, riding on top and moving your hips back and forth rather than up and down
Mm.
will like stimulate the cervix. Moving your spine in a wave,
Okay.
or spiraling your sacrum like that, so that whatever's inside is like uh
In
getting
kind of like the yob yum position spiraling? Is that
stimulating it. It could be yab yum, or it could be the man laying down, or you could, like I said, you could be using a dildo. But it's this feeling of spiraling around the cervix, or kind of going back and forth, not so much like in and out.
right? Like not the ee.
Right.
So what I heard you
um,
saying when you were talking about the way that these nerves are innervating the cervix at a deeper level, it sounds like the more superficial kind of light touch, tickly sensations are not really going to stimulate those nerves as much. So it's really
no.
more of an impact kind of deeper penetrating impact on
Yeah,
that
or like
side.
a massaging, a deep, I have trouble reaching those with my fingers because I have a long vagina, but I can use a wand or something and get in there and press and kind of massage around them,
And
and you just follow what feels good around it. But the thing that Taoists say is that the three orgasms are kind of sequential. Like you don't just go right to the cervical orgasm. Like usually you need to go to the front door first
uh-huh.
and work with the clitoris. Maybe you have a clitoral orgasm, maybe you don't, but you get very excited because that is the place on the feminine body where there are the most nerve endings. Is the clitoris. That's the primary sexual organ.
Sure.
And then you work deeper inside with the G spot and see what happens with that. Get it turned up that way. And then you might be opened up
So
enough
this is
where,
going to have to take all day, is what I'm hearing.
yeah. Well, I
You're going to
think,
have to really relax,
I think the Taoists that were exploring this stuff had a lot of time. They were
right?
probably
It's a
uh,
learning process, right? You gotta take your
royalty.
time and perfect the technique.
Yeah, exactly. And also, there's a lot of brain chemicals that happen during sex. Like about 2 minutes before you have an orgasm, your brain reward centers just like light up
Oh,
and
2 minutes.
activate and start going, wow,
Interesting.
something really good is happening and about to
Mm.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
And those are usually activated like when you're eating food and drinking, like you get the same centers acting up, and
Mm.
your brain has all of a sudden a whole bunches of blood go to your brain. Like it's super good for your brain to have sex. It grows brain cells because you
Mm.
get this flood of of blood, and you also get a lot of hormones. You get oxytocin and one called PEA, which are like love hormones for bonding, and increase of testosterone, which helps you concentrate. Dopamine. I want to talk about that more in a minute, but it's like a surge of pleasure. a focused surge of pleasure. And then you get endorphins, which are like natural opiates. And also, you release DMT out of your pineal gland.
Ooh.
Really?
Yes. And DMT is
In
like called the
in
God
orgasms?
chemical. It's like in
Oh,
ayahuasca and other.
that's
Um,
important. I
you have
would
your
like to
own
do
little
some more
DMT.
DMT.
Yeah, you've
Natural
got your own little
DMT.
generator in there, and
Yeah.
it's from your pineal gland, and it happens when you have this extended sexual stimulation. So
Right.
after you have to do it for a while and do this long, savoring, slow, kind of
Right.
tantric kind of sex, and as you
Right.
do that, then all these chemicals build up in your brain, and um, and then you have these mind-blowing orgasms,
Right.
basically. Like most people don't really know how the nervous system works and how the sex works, but you have different speeds like a car. We only usually use first gear for
Yeah.
sex,
Right.
and and
And the
it's just
quickies
kind of, yeah, it's kind of
for
on the
release.
surface of our nervous system. It's
Mhm.
not very deep. And the Taoists recommend that you come up and you build up to a peak, but you stop before you have an orgasm, and then you chill out for a little while, and then you build it up to another peak, and that second peak is going to be higher. It's
Right.
going to be more intense, and it'll be deeper in your nervous system, and then you let it chill out for a while, and you do that at least 3 times.
Right.
They say 7 times. I've never been able to do it 7 times.
7 times. Okay. Yeah. That,
That's a
but
lot of waiting.
goals, like, we've got to have goals. I want to
But
have,
and then you get to a very high state where it's this sort of orgasmic plateau that may go on for a very long time, this extended feeling of orgasm, but it's from your deep nerves. So it's more like a wave of energy than an explosion.
huh.
And there's a book on that I read many years ago called Extended Sexual Orgasm,
Yeah.
ES,
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
they talk about how to induce that state. But your body has so many different gears, and that we as Westerners haven't learned to use.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of that is about letting those brain chemicals build up in the system, about letting
Yes,
them be released, letting them have their effect. Like you said, there's that 2-minute gap between the initial release before an orgasm happens, rather than
yes,
just having those quick firing nerves activating everything and trying to make it all happen right away.
yes, absolutely. And do I have time to talk a little bit about the 4 pleasure
Yes.
chemicals
Absolutely.
in the
We'd love
brain?
to hear more about it.
All right, because I'm kind of a health geek.
Yeah.
I like to
Let's
study
geek
how
out
the
on it.
body works. So we talked about dopamine, and dopamine is the reward chemical, and it enables motivation and also concentration. Like most people, if you're a morning person, you get up in the morning, you have a lot of dopamine going. You're like, I want to get up, do stuff, get stuff done. It helps you learn stuff, and it gives you this sense of determination. And if you don't have enough of it, you'll have a sense of like wanting to procrastinate a lot. You might have mood swings and you can't focus and you feel anxious, kind of low energy. You don't have any motivation or self esteem, kind of feel hopeless. Those are symptoms of low dopamine. So you can increase dopamine by doing small daily tasks and completing them. When you finish a task, you get a little hit of dopamine.
Hmm.
That's why it feels good to like, okay,
Reward.
I have a goal. I got to that point. I'm done. And it's actually stressful for humans to have a job that never gets done.
Right.
Like you're always doing the same thing and it's never done.
Yeah.
That's stressful. So you get a little reward when something is finished.
Yeah. And
Um,
even just saying, it's not, because there are tasks that you have to do every day, but I
mhm,
think that, being like, okay, that's done at least for today, right? And like
exactly,
celebrating that,
exactly. And just
right?
going, okay, that's enough for
Right.
today. You
Mm-hmm.
get a little
Exactly.
brain reward for that.
Yeah. Good
And
job.
Dopamine tends to be kind of addictive because
Yeah. Well, that's
sharp
what makes
pleasure.
Facebook so addictive is because we're like, "Ooh, I got a like," you know?
Yeah,
And games
exactly. And you
and
get a little hit
winning
of dopamine
games. Yep.
whenever you
Games.
get a little like on Facebook or somebody posts a text to you. It's like
Right.
anything that's
Ding.
new
Right.
and different gives you dopamine. And so people can get totally in this like little rut where they're
Yeah.
like needing
I
dopamine
want
all the time.
more. Want more dopamine.
More winning all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Yeah, more winning. You can also get more dopamine by moving your body. Like exercise is like one of the best.
Mm.
And doing something creative like writing, cooking, making something like a craft, like doing something that's creative, that'll give you dopamine. Eating food and doing self-care activities, taking care of yourself, all of those
Yeah.
things. So if you're finding yourself low in dopamine, people will often seek those kinds of things. And the thing I want to say about brain chemistry, especially dopamine, is any kind of chemical in your body, you eventually, if you're on it all the time, you develop a tolerance to it.
Yeah.
So, if you're smoking pot every day, what do you know? You're going to have to smoke more and more and more pot to
Right.
get the same sensation.
Right.
You're going to have more and more and more dopamine to get the same sensation. That's why there's been this big, popular movement to go on dopamine detoxes, because if you can stop doing it for a while, then your brain will reset.
Oh,
You're
reset.
sensitive to it
Yeah.
again. Yeah. And then oxytocin. That's
Oxytocin,
the
the love
love,
hormone.
love. So it increases your feeling like you trust people, you want to be connected to people, you want to touch them. It's super important in like bonding with people.
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough of it, again, you might have like a lack of motivation, feeling anxious. You might feel disconnected, like
Yeah.
it's hard to connect with people. You also might have insomnia, or just generally kind of feel stressed or lonely. All
Mm.
those things are like, okay, you need some more oxytocin. So there's things you can do about that. You could play with your pet. Like
Mm.
pets are great for oxytocin. Snuggle with
Mm.
your pet, hold hands with someone, do any kind of physical touching will make oxytocin. Hug people, but you need to hug them for at least 30 seconds. Like,
Oh, yeah. The longer
no,
hugs. Mm-hmm.
yeah, like most hugs are like a couple seconds. That's not long enough to actually get,
Right.
this land. You just hug
Or,
them and say,
yeah,
"Let's
I heard 6 seconds.
take 5 breaths."
Yeah. Something happens after 6 seconds as well, like,
You're getting more into the realm of cuddling there.
right.
I would say,
Right, right, right,
you're
exactly.
a hug, a 30
And
second
you can,
hug is a long
It is a long
hug.
time.
yeah, it is. It
You
is. You
have to
have to
check
kind of
in
make
and
an
be like,
agreement,
you have time for
Otherwise,
30-second hugs?
Yeah, I need some oxytocin. Can we devote a
Can
little
we
yeah,
time
schedule
here?
this?
Hmm.
Yeah.
let's have an oxytocin generating hug. Otherwise, they'll
Right.
be like, "Why are they hanging on to me so long?"
Well, asking for consent is always key.
Right. And then also giving or receiving compliments. Like if you just tell someone that you something you appreciate about them, and they may or may not say something back, but even just giving one, that will give you more oxytocin. So let's just take a moment and breathe into that nice oxytocin feeling. I personally think that we can generate things just by remembering that feeling. If we
Oh.
remember the feeling of hugging someone and
Mm.
snuggling and feeling, yeah, eh, just visualizing something has almost the same effect on your body as actually doing it.
Yeah, you're getting
It's
back into
really
how
strange.
that conscious part of the brain is giving feedback to the more primitive part of the brain, right? And you're
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And they've done studies on this with like athletes where they imagine themselves exercising and they get
Oh,
strong.
right. No, it totally works, right? Because
Yeah,
it's if it's a strong memory that you're repeating over and over. Absolutely.
right. So you can actually practice feeling good and
Yeah, practice
generating
feeling
your own
good.
brain chemicals. You can remember what it felt like to get something accomplished,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then you get
absolutely.
dopamine for example.
I'd be willing to bet that smells are pretty strongly associated with that as well, because memory and
Yeah,
smell are so
They're
strongly linked.
linked.
So maybe there's a
yeah,
smell of success that will, or smell of comfort.
Yeah, and
yeah,
each person
absolutely.
probably would have their own sense of what that means for them.
Yeah, exactly. And then like serotonin's interesting. It's like a mood stabilizer, and it
Mm,
generally just makes you feel happy and a sense of well-being, and I feel good. And it also plays a role in our social dynamics. And if you don't have enough of that one, then you're going to get anxiety and maybe panic attacks. You might be like super sensitive to everything, have mood swings,
mm,
might be afraid of other people, have phobias. And again, like low self esteem and maybe like obsessive compulsive things. All of that's like low serotonin because it regulates your moods. And I want to say that serotonin, like 95% of your serotonin is made by your gut bacteria.
yeah, there's so much going on in your gut.
Yeah, the little guys are helping you
Yes,
feel good. So
right.
if your gut bacteria are not happy, you are
Yeah.
not happy.
No.
That's just the way it is. And
Yeah.
so you want to be sure those gut bacteria are happy. And people that have like chronic gut problems,
Right.
it's really, really impacts your
Well-being.
mood.
Yeah.
And I notice it when I take antibiotics
Oh,
because
then it
the
wipes out all
all the
your,
bacteria, yeah,
yeah, everything. Right. And then
it
you're going to
wipes
have
it
to
out.
build it all back.
And my moods just start swinging all over the place.
Right. Yeah. It's
So I
really,
developed I yeah, go ahead.
oh, no, I just was thinking, I recently went through, I really shifted my diet and did this crazy elimination diet. But then I realized, oh, wow, so much of what I was eating, wasn't actually good for me. And so you really have
Mhm.
to, it depends on each person and what
Yes,
affects your gut bacteria. And so that really, I mean, to me, of course, I did it during the pandemic. So it was kind of convenient that I was going to be cooking for myself at home anyway, experimenting. And
right.
so I had the time to do that. But yeah, it was a lot that I learned, and
Yeah,
it was kind of a journey. If you want to take on that, I really recommend, the elimination diet
yeah, absolutely. Then you
just to
figure out what
experiment.
is actually irritating you and
You,
what isn't.
yeah. Because
There
for me,
are
it was
definitely
beans. And I
ways.
was like, I always thought beans were so healthy, but they're not healthy for me, you
Right,
know?
exactly.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
everyone
I had
probably is different.
It is. And in Chinese medicine, they talk about that. It's all a matter of your yin and yang balance,
Ah,
the
yes.
style of body that you have.
Right.
Um,
Very
all of that. It's
complicated.
very individual what you
Right.
need to
Yeah.
eat. So I don't have any feelings like everybody should eat like me or anything,
Right.
like
Yeah.
that's totally different. But there are definitely things you can do to help your gut bacteria be happy, like eating prebiotics, like fiber. There's certain
Yeah.
things you can eat that
Prebiotics.
make them
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much self care involved in paying attention to your diet and cooking for yourself
Yeah.
and really
Mm-hmm.
paying
Yeah,
attention to what you're nourishing your body with as well. That I'm sure in
absolutely.
itself is going to release a lot of different
Right.
happy chemicals.
Totally.
Absolutely. And I think it's like one of the most important things to pay attention to. And in Chinese medicine, they say all chronic disease starts in your gut. And that's the thing that you work on first.
Right. Yeah.
Making sure that you can absorb the food, that your gut bacteria are happy. So I discovered when I was taking antibiotics that if I also took probiotics at the same time, like off every couple
Right.
hours,
Mm-hmm.
then my moods didn't
They
swing like
didn't
that. Even
crash.
even though they
Right.
got
Okay,
cooled off
good.
pretty fast, it was
Yeah.
enough.
Cool. So tell us about some of the projects that you're working on. I know that you do retreats, and what are some of the things that you have coming up?
Well, I'd like to finish the other two
Oh yeah, please.
chemicals first. Like serotonin, you can increase it if you need it. You can go in sunlight. You can do meditation. You can go out into nature. You can get massage. Taking a cold shower
Right.
helps. And any kind of moving your body. just in general, if you're not feeling good, exercise is the number one thing
Right.
for all kinds of any emotional whatever.
Yeah.
And then the last one is endorphins, and endorphins are like our own natural painkillers.
Yeah.
And we release endorphins in response to acute pain. And some people have learned to play with that when they do kink practices, where
That's right.
you induce a little pain because you
Totally.
get this endorphin rush,
Right.
and it's like, woo, this is really
Yeah.
nice.
Needle
But
play.
yeah, but if you don't have enough of that chemical, you might have impulsive behavior and anxiety. You might get depressed, have insomnia. Your
Right.
body might ache also. You might have aches and pains. So you get more endorphins by laughing. So you can go watch some comedy things. You can move your body. And interestingly enough, you get it from dark chocolate.
Yeah.
It's got chemicals in it that are similar. Essential oils, crying, letting yourself cry,
Yeah.
eating spicy foods apparently
Mm-hmm.
makes more endorphins.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of important to learn how our bodies work and how to like hack our bodies,
Right.
because it's predictable. It's knowable
Right.
how to make ourselves feel better.
Right.
There's some science behind pleasure, it turns out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you want to know some of the things I'm about to
Yeah,
do?
please tell us about
I
some
organize.
events coming up.
Yeah, I organize for myself, and I also organize for other people. And like I'm about to go to Bali in a couple
Oh,
weeks and do a
Bali.
pilgrimage there.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bali is
and
so
sing and
beautiful.
dance in Bali. And then we have a conscious connections retreat in April on the Big Island of Hawaii, where I live. And it's kind of we select for people that have a little experience with tantra and sex positive spaces. So it's kind of a little more advanced retreat. It's really sweet. And I'm also going to be hosting a Prayers of the Womb women's retreat
Ooh.
in June to help women just tune into their womb power and reawaken their own power and their own wildness,
Mm.
and just support each other in that. And then we're doing the Oregon Tantra Festival in June
Oh, yes.
also.
Oregon Tantra Festival is how we met.
Yeah, we haven't done it for 5 years because of the
Yeah.
um, pandemic, but now we're coming back. We did it
Right.
online one year, and that was fun. And that's June 8th through 12th. And also, I really enjoy, I've been hosting these workshops called Liberation, Releasing the Past, which are about inner child work, tuning into our inner child patterning, which is to me is like the root of everything, right?
Right.
If you're having a struggle with your emotional self or getting your life to work, it always goes back to the earliest years. So
Right.
it's, to me, it's like the most powerful healing work you can do is go
Right.
back to do that. And Stacey Ellis teaches about how to communicate with your subconscious mind. So she teaches a bunch of tools of how to actually talk to that part of your mind to get out of old programs. So I'm really excited about those. And we're going to do one near Seattle, like June 16th. And when I teach my own work, I teach a variety of different tantric practices and healing touch practices. Sacred pelvic healing massage is one of them, where we approach the pelvis and the genitals with very conscious touch, working with pressure points and working with the energetic streams and allowing people to move the emotions that are stuck in there. So it's a different kind of touch than
Mm.
people usually get around that part of their body, because it's not really focused on trying to get anywhere except for healing.
Right.
And also, I teach a form of therapy called heartbeat nurturing therapy. And I have a book that I wrote on it. There's my book. And that's kind of a tantric therapy where you hold someone's head against your heart and you reparent them. It's a form of inner child work. So
Oh,
you get them into
so
a like a
sweet.
light trance
Mm.
state and make hypnotic suggestions and role play being a parent for them while they go into their inner child. It's super powerful stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I've done the most in my life that I'm super passionate about is teaching people how to help each other with counseling work, because, it can cost a lot of money to go see a therapist and go get a session.
Yeah.
And people need a lot of help often,
Right.
so it's nice to be able to exchange sessions without having to pay for it.
Right.
So you can get trained in this therapy. And I just came out with this book a couple months ago, which is how to exchange peer counseling sessions.
Oh, peer couch counseling. Yeah.
Peer counseling, and especially emotional release work. But it's not only around the skills of how to listen to someone well, but also how to draw out the old patterns and release them, and also how to work with your energetic body. Like I'm teaching psychic skills like grounding and clearing your energy and separating out from someone, and things like that. So it's like a combination of those with actual, like, what do you do when someone's upset and they're in front of you? How do you help?
Right. Well, that sounds wonderful. Anything
Yeah.
else that you're excited about that you want to share?
I think that's all I've got right now. You have
Well,
any questions about anything I said?
I
I don't.
am good. I have, yeah, unfortunately, I've been looking forward to your work for so long. And unfortunately, I'm a little bit under the weather. So, but
Uh-huh.
yeah,
I didn't, I didn't notice that.
oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold. But yeah, I've just been so looking forward to, yeah, since we connected with Evelina Rose at
Yeah.
the Oregon Tantra Festival years ago. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to have you on Sexploration with Monika finally.
Yeah.
And thank you
Oh, I
so
thought of
much.
one other thing I could say,
Yes, please.
which is this last year I did a long 6-day program teaching my work, and I got a number of apprentices. So I have a group of people now that want to learn how to teach what I teach, because I don't actually teach it that often.
Mm,
And so I have a number of people who are younger than me who can learn how to do it and carry it on. We're very excited about that. And I'm going to do another series for the apprentices this summer on Labor Day weekend. So people that are really interested in actually learning to teach,
is this in
they,
person or via Zoom?
yeah, in person
Got it. So you'd have to
near
go to
Seattle.
Hawaii, which might not be
Yeah,
bad in any way.
Doesn't
yeah.
sound bad to me.
This,
Right.
it'll be near Seattle. A lot of them are
Oh,
in
in
Portland,
Seattle.
Seattle.
Oh, okay. Because you're originally from the Northwest.
Right.
Cool.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
we do have an online, group where they support each other, because they're learning how to give sexual healing sessions and teach it to other people. I personally think that doing sexual healing work is really an important healing modality, and usually you have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to go learn it. I
Absolutely.
did. I
Hmm.
had to pay a lot of money to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of passionate about making it more accessible. Like,
Right.
let's make it in the hundreds rather than the thousands,
Right.
and teach people how to give it to each other so that they can work on their own lovers.
Nice.
Like, I'm very passionate about that.
Right.
Yeah,
Change the world faster. Make it cheaper.
I love that idea of sharing knowledge, and
Yep.
especially in something that is such an intimate subject
Yeah.
that partners can share with
Absolutely.
each other and just have an intimate
Right.
experience of learning together.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Amara Karuna, for coming on Sexploration with Monika.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much for giving us your wisdom and teaching us about cervical orgasm and pleasure. So,
Hmm.
thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
again. Thanks so
Many
much.
blessings.
Thanks so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika right now.